Welcome to the week ahead. Here are the stories we'll be watching in the coming week. Analysts will be looking for confirmation that the Japanese economy got off to a strong start in 2017 when GDP numbers for the first 3 months of the year are released. German Chancellor Angela Merkel will host the first ever meeting of health ministers representing the world's 20 most powerful nations. And in corporate news, Walmart has taken on Amazon in a fierce fight to capture the online retail market. Investors will want to see if its e-commerce sales are rising as a result when it publishes numbers for the first quarter of the year. Analysts think Japan enjoyed strong economic expansion in the first quarter of 2017 and are looking to gross domestic product numbers for confirmation of that on Thursday.
The consensus expectation is for annualised growth of about 1.8%. That's well ahead of Japan's long-run trend. That should be driven by consumption and by net exports, which have got a boost from the weakness of the yen following the election of Donald Trump as US President last autumn. However, Japan's GDP data are notoriously unreliable, and this initial figure may well be revised before we know what the final picture was for Japan's economy at the start of this year.
A positive GDP figure will mark 5 consecutive quarters of growth for the first time in 11 years. This is seen as demonstrating the extent to which the economy has progressed since the slowdown of 2014 to 2015, brought on by a rise in consumption tax and weakness in emerging economies. Japan's economy is, though, suffering from labour shortages. The unemployment rate is down to 2.8%. While inflation remains low for now, most economists believe that if growth stays above its long-term trend, then eventually the tight jobs market will start to drive up wages, and that will feed into higher prices for the consumer. Also on Thursday in Berlin, German Chancellor Angela Merkel will open up the first ever meeting of health ministers representing the G20. The 2-day meeting will prepare recommendations to put to leaders of the grouping at the Hamburg summit in July.
Topping the agenda will be the global spread of resistance to antibiotics, which Ms. Merkel has personally highlighted as a challenge. The ministers will also discuss the strengthening of healthcare systems and global health crisis management, for example in disease outbreaks, as in the Ebola crisis in Africa.
An outline action plan agreed by the G20 in China last year called on members to support international efforts to strengthen global and national health systems that are innovative and sustainable. Walmart has stepped up its presence online as it battles Amazon in a fiercely competitive retail market. Investors will be focusing on growth in e-commerce sales for its stores when they go over numbers on Tuesday.
Walmart's an interesting story. They've held up pretty well this year in what's been a really competitive retail environment. Their stock is up about 10% since January, and analysts are predicting about 97 cents a share for profits for this quarter, which is just below what it was in the same time a year ago. And for the last quarter, which came out in February, they beat expectations, and the big thing was that their e-commerce sales grew by almost 30%. Which I think investors were quite happy with, because the big problem is competing with Amazon in this space. That's their huge focus. They've been buying up a bunch of different companies to try to get into online sales more. So I think that the big focus in this report as well will be on how their e-commerce sales did.
Nonetheless, Walmart is also pressured by competitors on the high street. Profits are expected to remain squeezed as the company sacrifices margins to boost sales, slashing prices to compete with discounters such as Aldi.
The sector itself has had kind of a tumultuous time. As you know, there are a lot of stores shutting down. Sears has been shutting stores. Malls in America have been having quite a tough time. So I think the big thing for Walmart is that they're trying to compete directly with Amazon at this point. And Amazon takes up, I think the numbers are $5 of every $10 spent on buying stuff online goes to Amazon. So they're competing against this, this giant in the space, and so that seems to be the focus of their efforts right now.
And that's what the week ahead looks like from the FT here in London.